in the Yuba Headwaters for future habitat restoration projects.
Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction. So for the last couple of years, I've been working on an Aspen restoration planning grant funded from the Wildlife Conservation Board in the Yuba River watershed, which is just north of Sacramento here and on the western slope of the Sierra Nevada. So you may be asking, why do we want to restore Aspen? Aspen comprise a very small percentage of habitat within our Sierra Nevada headwaters, and they make up about 1 to 2% of that area. And within that, they provide outsized benefits for biodiversity and landscape scale, fire resilience, and water quality. So because of that, we want to pursue Aspen, like our organization, the South Yuba River Citizens League, wants to pursue Aspen restoration projects. So the first part of this project was to do a field assessment of the entire Yuba River watershed to determine the location of those Aspen stands, where they were, because there hadn't been an Aspen delineation assessment for like over 20 years within this area, and then determine the health of those Aspen stands. So we wanted to determine the location, the size, and the health of them. And so we went out, we ground truth those locations, we did a rapid assessment to determine which of those Aspen stands we want to pursue and to prioritize for a future Aspen restoration project. Which, within this area, we then moved into the analysis portion of this project. So I did a spatial analysis model of in 3 different kinds, and I combined them together to get my final output. So for this project, we wanted to identify the stands that were at greatest risk of loss, but also locate the stands that were had the best habitat quality and which ones were most successful. So we wanted that feasibility portion of this within this prioritization tool. So for our stand health, we wanted to determine which of those Aspen stands are at greatest risk of stand loss, like I said. So within that, we looked at the amount of regeneration. Were these Aspen stands regenerating? Did they have enough young suckers, because they regenerate often clonally within this area, to come up? Then we also looked at the amount of conifer cover and then the conifer encroachment within these Aspen stands, and to determine what the level of conifers were within that area, as well as the amount of browse from ungulates. So a lot of these Aspen stands experience significant browse from either cattle within the area and also from deer. And then we also looked at the overall risk of loss. Then we also looked at the habitat quality, because with projected climate change impacts, we wanted to determine which of those Aspen stands, of the ones that were at high risk of loss, would be able to persist under our projected climate change impacts. So looking at hotter and drier conditions. So within that part, that separate model, we looked at the proximity to other Aspen stands, their elevation, the size of those stands, the aspect, and as well as the access to water. And then lastly, from a purely project management standpoint, we wanted to determine what the accessibility is of those Aspen stands. So their location from roads, trails, and the general slope of it, because this allows us to determine if we're able to get machinery into those sites, what kind of machinery, and the general cost of that project. So within this, we are able to get all 3 of these models together to make a combined suitability model to determine those which stands were at most risk of loss and which ones were most feasible to restore. And that gives us output and ranking of the 123 Aspen stands that were assessed during the field assessment of this portion of this project, and ranked out which of those would be best to pursue for a future Aspen restoration project. So the result of that tool was the identification of the Aspen stand at Salmon and Packer Creek. This is located in the North Yuba, north of Highway 49 and west of the Gold Lakes Highway. This area is a pretty high recreational location, and it experiences a combination of both riparian quarter aspen and meadow fringe. So within this project, we were looking at 4 different goals. So we wanted to pursue aspen restoration by conifer thinning and removal, general thinning for forest health, fuels management, because we wanted to be able to introduce fire at a later stage of this project after the the forest has been thinned and fire would be able to safely be reintroduced within this area, as well as the select installation of beaver dam analogs to increase the meadow and meadow edge habitat for fringe aspen. So what comes next in this project? We're looking at doing additional pre-implementation monitoring through this summer, finalizing our permits and designs for this project, and beginning implementation for this project this fall. And then also, because this was a planning grant to determine the location and size of different aspen stands as well as their feasibility for restoration, we're planning for additional sites identified within, we have like different aspen restoration projects throughout our pipeline. And also the identification of future joint projects. So whether it's joining with additional meadows projects, meadows restoration projects, or forest health projects in the future. Thank you for this short talk. And if you have any questions or are curious to learn more about this project, I will have a poster downstairs. Thank you.